Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Maslansky. Today, I am joined by Len Joy, and Len is an author that lives here in Skevanston, and he has written several books. He has a new book that's out called Everyone Dies Famous. You could see it here if you're watching on YouTube, and it's available everywhere, especially at Bookends and Beginnings, are a fan of the show. So Len, thank you so much for being here today to talk about your book.
Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. Get a local connection. That's great.
I love the local connection. You know, what I have found that's so cool about doing this podcast is that I get to meet a lot of people who I would never have had the opportunity to before. Yeah. And it's great to be able to give you the spotlight, somebody here in my local community who's a writer. And I probably would never have read your books. And it was such a delight, a joy to read your latest novel. And I can't wait to read the other ones that you've written previously. So, you know, tell us a little bit about Everyone Dies Famous.
Sure. To back up, I started writing about 20 years ago. I had a career in business. I had a manufacturing company, which is part of what informs some of the things in the book. I used to commute from Phoenix to Chicago for about 20 years. I went back and forth every 10 days. And I had a lot of time in the air. I'd read a lot and fantasize about becoming a world famous author and doing something different than what I was doing. And finally in 2003, I got this offer from the University of Chicago's Graham School, just a writing certificate, creative writing course. And I took it, I enjoyed it, and I kept going from there. I decided, that year after that, we'd wound down the business, and I started working on trying to become a writer. Took a lot of courses, went to a lot of workshops. And one of the courses I took was a novel workshop. And that usually you have a novel you're working on. And I had a short story and I worked it into a novel. And 8 years later, it became American Pastime, which was the first novel I got published. And the reason for this long introduction is that was about a minor league pitcher in the 50s. And he pitches a perfect game at the opening of the novel. And that's like, he's just on the cusp of being brought up to the St. Louis Cardinals for his major league debut. And, but he pitches he's only going to pitch a few innings, but he's pitching so well, he insists that they keep him in the game, and it ends up pitching the perfect game, and he injures his arm, doesn't get his opportunity. From there, his life unravels, his problems with his wife and his kids, and he gives up on baseball. And the novel is like a 20-year history of America from the 50s through to the Vietnam War. And at the end of it, it's a story of redemption, recovery, and second chances. And at the end of the novel, the character's name is Dancer Stonemason. He's reconciled with his son Clayton, and he drives off into the sunset literally, and is going to take a new job outside of the small town in Missouri where he lives. And that was very well received, that novel, and I like those characters, and I had originally envisioned a much larger novel, longer novel, but I was told several times that you're not going to get your 50-year saga published as a debut novelist, and I cut it in half. But I had all this material and thoughts on these characters as they aged, and so after I wrote Better Days, which you have behind you there, and
yes, here.
I went back and thank you, good prop. Revisit I wrote a novel called Everyone Dies Famous, and instead of having a 20-year saga, this novel takes place over 14 hours, and it takes place in 2003. So the characters, Dancer was still a fairly young man at the end of American Pastime. Now he's 70 years old. He's just lost his son in a car accident. He's grieving, and meanwhile, a tornado is approaching the town that nobody knows about that. And it's an ensemble of characters and subplots. It's sort of a story of a small town enduring a lot of change. And I grew up in a small town, and so I have most of the work I've done has something to do with athletes, small towns, and sports.
Are some of the characters people that you've encountered in your life, or kind of extrapolations of people that you know?
Some of them are. Mostly it's like there's quirks and traits I think I observe in people, and sometimes they become part of the character. It's hard for me to remember how these characters, when I start writing, the first thing I do is come up with who's the character and what do they look like. But I didn't pick someone that I knew before, but sometimes they do have certain traits, but I try to create original people.
Well, they were. What's so great about the story is that the way it's written, you just get into it. And I felt like I was there, and I could almost see this as a movie, where there's so many different, such a climax of all the different things going on with all the characters, and this tornado coming, this impending doom. And the way that you start the book where the tornado has hit, and then we go back and we see the past day of what's happened with all these characters. I love that type of way of writing. It just gets you right into it. How is that similar in style to how you wrote the other books? Or
no, the first book was that was just literally like you're taking, I don't know like what the right metaphor is, but like I wrote a story, one chapter, and then it's sort of like what's going to happen next, and I wrote another one. It was pretty much a mess, but at least I created a lot of material, and had to go through a lot of revisions and rethinking, and I went off in the wrong direction. I had to keep coming back. So the first one was definitely a learning experience, and I was lucky to have a really good my publisher was a very good editor, and I had worked on it for years and it wasn't getting anywhere, and they said, hey, we'd like to publish this, but they gave me this good news, bad news, we want to publish it, but basically you have to rewrite it all over again. And like, okay, but it really helped me to think through some of the things I was doing with it. And now, like compared to that, with like Better Days, I was able to write that, and I had a notion of where I wanted to go, and I wrote that in less than a year. This one, Everyone Dies Famous, took longer, but just a couple of years. But there's definitely a learning experience to this process, and it's just like anything else. Like the first time through it, really naive about what you think you can do, and you realize like there's a lot to it, and a lot to I don't find it it's so overwhelming now. The idea of like writing a novel is sort of enjoyable to me, but it does sort of coincide with my other career, which is like endurance sports and training. Is like you got to do it's one step at a time. You got to do a lot of training and preparation.
Well, they say you have to have 10,000 hours in order to become an expert, right?
Yeah, right. I got at least that.
Yeah. Well, yesterday I actually I do some interviews for the JCC, the Jewish Community Center.
Mm-hmm.
They have their film festival, and I've been interviewing some authors. And I interviewed an author. I'll give her a plug. Her name's Anna Solomon. The Book of V, which is an interesting story. It's historical fiction. And she's been a writer her whole life. She has a master's degree in writing. I don't know the exact degree, but it's in the field. And I asked her what her process is like, how she became a writer, and but she's been doing this for a long time. You've come into this where I read about your history where you wanted to be a novelist when you were younger in high school.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. But then after, you wound down the business that you were running and going, you decided to actually go and do this. Do you think, was it a hard step for you to take that leap to say, look, I'm going to step into my dream?
I think I did it sort of gradually. Like I was just saying, I'm going to try this and see if it's, am I going to make any progress with it? And I think it was good for me that I just liked writing. I like people. Part of my inspiration for this was when I was in business. You'd write stuff, and that's like trying to ask for money and things like that. It's like a certain kind of prose. It's a lot different, and it's not fun. And I started writing Christmas letters, holiday letters, when the kids were really young. And I just like to make, sort of like, as opposed to the letter where everybody's great and everything, I like to sort of make fun of them and all the troubles and struggles. It was easy to do when they were young and couldn't read them, but it became a tradition. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of positive feedback from people about the letter, and I said, I really like that. I'd love to have a lot of sales, but really what I really want is readers. I said to this guy the other day, I think I'd hand this book out on the street corner if I could be ensured that the people I handed to would read it. And so that's where I started from. So I took courses, and I was really lucky in the courses I took through the University of Chicago, and then I went to the Iowa Writers Festival, which is a summer thing. It's not the famous program. It's something anybody can go to. And I took good courses. Like the initial courses I took had to do with writing really short fiction, and you have to write a story in 300 words. And that was a really good discipline to learn. I think that's helped me a lot, particularly consistent with my kind of writing, which is pretty lean.
Yeah.
And you just got to get rid of you have to make sure every word you've got in there has a purpose. You're not just filling up pages and stuff. So that really helped me a lot.
Well, it helps the reader. I mean, for me, reading it, it is so crisp and concise, but even without all the superfluous words that sometimes come with the novel, you feel still that you're in the scene. You're there. You get the sense of where the characters are coming from. They really develop over the course of the story. And like you said, it's only 16 hours of their life that you're taking a slice of, but you kind of know their backstory, where they're coming from, their challenges, their struggles, their hopes and dreams. And it all comes out that way, which is so wonderful to see.
Well,
but
good to hear.
Yeah, as I was reading it, and I don't want to give away anything with the ending or whatnot, but my question is, did you have different ideas for the ending? Because I thought things would go a little differently. But I mean, did you have different options and then decide to go with one way?
Yeah, no, I had a lot of, endings are hard for me. It's like, I sometimes have a general idea where I'm headed, but I don't really know for sure. And then it took a while. I didn't have a different ending. I mean, it just, as I got to that chapter and I started writing it, and I realized this is how I want it to end. And, it worked for me. The ending is interesting. I get a lot of different reaction to it, and different interpretation, I think is what I find most interesting. I think that's great. I love to hear what other people's takes are on stories, because there's no wrong answer, it's like you can say this happened or this other thing happened, but
well, in my mind, I do have a different interpretation of it, which again, I don't want to discuss and give away the book, but I kind of thought about it a lot, and where it has a lot of symbolism, I would say, and I'll leave it at that for now.
We can talk about it afterwards.
Yes, we certainly can. Everyone, you got to buy the book, and then we can have a discussion after I know that you've read it. So, as you go through this note, now you have this, this new book. You're trying to get publicity for it. We're in a different type of time during COVID. How has it been for you to get the word out? I know you've been on some radio shows. You are getting obviously you want to get more attention to it, but it's hard to go and be in person and do a reading or anything that typically would happen for an author. So what have you seen, and what has your publisher recommended?
It's it's not, it's always in the past I'd always have a book launch party locally, and that was great and fun. But for me, in the way with the tools we have now, like things like this, interviews, the social media, it's really, I think of all the industries, it's like reading books is the one that probably hasn't, been hurt a lot in that sense. It's like it's something for people to do, and it's actually been now I've overcome sometimes I put these posts on Facebook and stuff. I think people must be rolling their eyes. Like, I have another post about this damn book. It's like I've decided I'm just gonna, because it's really important to get the word out. I mean, it's like I want to be successful at this and get exposure, and I'd love to have more, local. Not recognition, or at least ability to get my books into stores, and I'd love to do book clubs. I mean, I've done several in the other books, and that's been it's probably the most fun event I've experienced, because just you get to contribute, watch. You don't have to say a lot, and you can listen to people discussing your book and arguing about it. Even is I'd love to do it for this one, because there's a lot of things that people can interpret differently. So I find like it's just a lot. It was a lot to learn on how to market your book, how to advertise and stuff. Even though I have a publisher, they rely on the authors to do a lot of the work, most of the work really. But they get the distribution. I mean, they get the book into stores. Like, I didn't even realize they were in all the stores that they're in. So that's good to know.
Absolutely. And I agree with what you said, that books are during this time, it's really great because people may have the time to read. And I think I've read a lot more than I normally do during this time. Part of it's because I want to read the book if I'm interviewing somebody like yourself, but just it's a way to slow down. It's a way to get yourself into a different headspace, and not be on electronics 24/7 like it's very regular to be. I think it's
and it's about something other than the pandemic. I mean, that's just sometimes I think I don't want to read another article about masks or anything. Just escape.
I don't want to wade into that even. It's all the time. But I think like what's great about this book is, okay, you're in early 2000s, and it's nice to go back in time a little bit, not that far, but a little bit back in time. And I do want to go back and read the other books where they're in different time periods too. But it's interesting to like take it back to that point and see how like one of the characters doesn't even have a cell phone. Actually, two of the characters don't have cell phones.
Right.
People are like, oh, you're crazy. But like, that's something that people just didn't all have at that point.
Right.
And you even touch on like opioids, where they're one of the characters, he's popping oxys. And it's something that is prevalent in America, especially in small town America.
Right.
So I imagine that was intentional to try to bring up some of these subjects and to talk about. I mean, is that something that, I mean, I know you said you grew up in small town America, I think in upstate New York, right?
You're correct, yes.
So, but it wasn't back then that it was like that.
And I always like to say, like, the small town of Maple Springs, Missouri, that is fictional, and it's a lot different from the town that I grew up in. But there's one thing that's, I like the small town device, I guess, because it's a way of, you have a world, I'm talking about for like writing a story. And, I just purposely describe this as a town that's small, but not too small. It's like you may encounter someone in the town and you don't know them, but chances are they know someone that you know. I mean, the degrees of separation are not great, so that you can have these subplots, which I do in the story, and they all are connected, and it's not implausible. I mean, it's because of this small universe, everybody knows someone who knows someone else. So it makes, from a writing point of view, a structure, as opposed to writing about something in Chicago where you have less opportunity that everybody's going to be connected. So, and that was an important aspect of it.
Is that one of the reasons why the book is titled "Everyone Dies Famous"? Because everyone knows you in a small town.
Well, it's I love I listen to music when I'm running and stuff, and I like songs that have stories, and I did sort of borrow that from Miranda Lampert's. She has a song, "Everybody Dies Famous in a Small Town," and it's a pretty funny song, but it's the same idea as you're famous because you won the hunting trophy or something like that. But it's I just like the notion of it. And I actually, as an aside, like on my second novel, Better Days, it was based on when I got that published, I had an epigraph at the beginning. It does have an epigraph from a Springsteen song, Better Days. And the publisher said, you can't use that because it's going to be too expensive. I'm not going to pay Springsteen for the rights to this. Yeah. It was sort of a bare bones publisher. And I said, well, I wanted it in there. So I contacted the people, the law firm that licenses his stuff, and he licensed it to me for $200.
Oh,
so
that wasn't so bad.
I said, pretty good I give Bruce a lot of credit for that. I'm sure he doesn't even know about it, but at least, he was allowing like little people to, because some artists are real sensitive about the use, and they had I had an epigraph and a beginning and ending, and they said, you got to get rid of the ending because they don't want to have any implication that this has something to do with the song, but they were okay with me using, and it worked really well. I mean, it fit what I was writing. So I gave a lot of two thumbs up to Bruce and his willingness to help other artists.
Well, that's cool that he did that. I mean, I think is, when you think of Americana music in a way,
right.
Rock and roll, that's Bruce Springsteen. And it's, I'm glad he allowed it to help it all tie together.
Yeah.
One book that I thought of a little bit as I was reading it was A Man in Full by Tom Wolfe, because talk about one of the characters is a real estate developer, and I had previously worked for a real estate developer for several years, and I met several other ones, and I think real estate developers get a bad rap sometimes. I think that there are people who actually want to do good, and it's not just about the power. It is about the creativity, but there's certainly people out there who it is about their ego. And this character is so interesting, where he is tied to all the other people within the story. And, he devastates the downtown area because they won't let him name a park after his deceased ex-wife. And then he's got this mall, and he's trying to build this other massive development, and everything is a victory for him. He's almost so shallow. And when I read, it's been a while since I read A Man in Full, but in many ways it's a similar type character. Did you think about that when you were writing it?
No, now that you mentioned that, I can't really remember all the specifics of that novel. I did read it, but it was probably 10 years ago or so. But
right.
Yeah, in characters, what I try to avoid, and I hope I even did it with Ted here, is that they're not. I don't want them to be two-dimensional. He has something going for him. I mean, his girlfriend, likes him, and she can see she knows everybody dislikes him, but she tries to point out some of his good points and stuff, and they're just sort of outweighed right now and then what you see. But I think it's important to try to get characters that have some multi dimensions. It makes them more interesting than just super bad guys.
Right. Well, all the characters I think are multi-dimensional, and it's just interesting how they interact with each other. But do you see like another book coming from this, an extension of the story?
Well, I just finished a novel that's based in Phoenix. Dry Heat is the name. It's still working on. We're probably finishing another revision, but it's more or less done. I did take a character from this novel and plop her down in that one. That takes place in 2007, or actually it takes place in 1999, and then it jumps forward to 2018. And the character of Anita, the woman, who marries Ted Landis, who dies in this in the future in this, and she goes off to Phoenix with his fortune.
Oh,
So
nice.
I like to do that. I mean, it's not like important for any development, but it's just sort of fun to have, like think that these people are still out there, and they make some sort of real to me. And she's a minor character in both stories, but I like to connect them that way. This one, I could see that. I have sort of, I'll know what I'm going to do for the next two novels, so we'll see what happens after that. But that's the one advantage. Well, one advantage, anyways, of it's not historical fiction, but it's not contemporary fiction either, and so I have room to tell these stories still in the past. The pandemic is going to really, in addition to a lot of other terrible things that's happening, it's like it affects any story you're writing because it's so universal. You can't, I was going to have a story that ended in 2020, and it's like I can't do that.
No.
I'm not sure how 2020 ends, and I'm like, I can't put that in there.
Well, I think right now we're going through a time of massive change, where it completely changes society. So the stories themselves will have to change from that. So I hear you. It's almost better to do it in the past to keep it where it's something that we know. But it is interesting to picture what the future is going to be from 2020 on. So
yeah,
an interesting way to.
I'm thinking I'm writing the next novel I have is an idea of a columnist who loses his job for not being woke enough, and he's driving an Uber, and so I don't know where Uber's going to be in this future. So it's like maybe I make it a 2018 or something, but
right.
Yeah, it's.
I could see, just as a side note, I could see just the continued push towards automation, where you're going to have more and more things, I mean, especially because of the risk of having people inside of a place like an Uber. You have an automated car be driving. I even saw that Airbus demonstrated on one of their airplanes a fully autonomous flight.
Wow.
So you look at that, and you could see a lot of different things coming, and changes in employment and use of humans, and how that will affect society. So I would implore you to look at that type of storyline for a futuristic way of looking at it. And by the way, it's so interesting that you're going back and forth between Phoenix for several years. For a previous job of mine, I was flying to Phoenix probably twice a month for
really?
years. Yeah, and I know that flight, and it's I miss going out to Phoenix. Actually, it's a nice place, but it gives you time. I think just having that break for 3.5 hours to read or just to do something else is something that we all need. Just a way to kind of escape for a few hours and look how much creativity it brought you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the right length, actually, because it's not like just up and down, and it's not like, when are we going to end it? It's just right for me. I got a lot done.
Exactly. So, Len, I wanted to ask you if you would read a passage of the book so people can get a taste of what's entailed.
I thought maybe to start, even when we didn't discuss this, I would read the back cover, because that does give a little bit of an introduction of what the story is about, and that might give it. Okay. Everyone Dies Famous is a story from the heartland about the uncommon lives of everyday people, the choices they make, how they live their lives, and how they die. As a tornado threatens their town, a stubborn old man who has lost his son teams up with a troubled young soldier to deliver a jukebox to the wealthy developer having an affair with the soldier's wife. It's July 2003, and the small town of Maple Springs, Missouri, is suffering through a month-long drought. Dancer Stonemason, a long-forgotten hometown hero still grieving over the death of his oldest son, is moving into town to live with his more dependable younger son. He hires Wayne Mesereau, an Iraq war veteran, to help him liquidate his late son's business. The heat wave breaks and the skies darken. Dancer tries to settle an old score, while Wayne discovers the true cost of his wife's indifference and turns his thoughts to revenge. When the tornado hits Maple Springs, only one of the men will make it out alive. We'll open with the prologue. It's very short. 7 p.m., July 18, 2003. Zeke Mesro left his apartment in Crestview Manor as soon as Big John Thomas on KUKU-FM announced, using his serious radio voice instead of his fake hillbilly twang, that they were bringing the bodies to the high school gymnasium. The tornado had arrived from the north, surprising the so-called experts. It cut an equal opportunity path of destruction through Maple Springs, flattening the Black Baptist Church on the west side where Zeke's very white ex-wife used to sing in the choir, and blowing away the sanctimonious Presbyterians on the east side. It pinballed down Main Street, chewing up the Tasty Freeze, Hank Dabney's Esso Station, Dr. Monacovo's Emergency Care Clinic, and the Main Street Diner, but sparing the useless bank, Crutchfield's boarded-up general store, and the VFW Lodge. As it roared out of town, it destroyed the Chevy dealership where Zeke's son had once worked, and the fancy townhouse development project Ted Landis was building across the road from Crestview Manor. Zeke wanted to call his son, but Wayne didn't own a cell phone. The road into town was impassable. Uprooted trees, overturned vehicles, chunks of concrete, twisted rebar, and pickup stick configurations of aluminum siding, roof tiles, and wallboard were strewn across the highway. It didn't matter. He couldn't drive anyways. His truck had disappeared. A soft mist hung in the air like a wet fog, and it was eerily quiet as he started walking down the highway to the high school. At the outskirts of town, he saw a man, his dark business suit turned gray with grit, standing in his front lawn, clutching an open briefcase and staring down the road like he was waiting for the bus. A few blocks farther on, an old woman wrapped up in a ratty bathrobe swept brick fragments from her front stoop. The stoop was all that was left of her home. As Zeke turned onto Hill Street, a teenager on an ancient Huffy with a twisted front tire pedaled slowly by, weaving around the debris, his head swiveling like he was trying to figure out which pile of rubble was his home. The high school at the end of Summit Avenue looked untouched. A highway patrol car and Sheriff Patrick Quinlan's cruiser flanked the driveway leading to the front of the school, and there were an ambulance and a fire truck in front of the entrance to the gymnasium. Two men were lifting someone off a stretcher into the ambulance. Sheriff Quinlan leaned against the open door of his car like he needed it for support. Water dripped from the brim of his hat, and his uniform was plastered to his skin. A mud-splattered Silverado rolled past Zeke and stopped at the driveway entrance. There were two body bags in the truck bed, body bags just like they'd had in Nam. Quinlan waved the truck through. As Zeke approached the sheriff, Quinlan held up his hand. "You have to go to City Hall, Zeke. The mayor's handling the missing persons reports." Zeke Mesro frowned. They had been friends once. Now I'll read the first paragraph of chapter 1. Chapter 1, 14 hours earlier. Dancer. It isn't really darkest before the dawn, at least not in the hills of southern Missouri, and the morning air is not cool and refreshing, not in July. As the sun approached the ridge of the Caledonia River Gorge, the sky was storm gray, but that was just an illusion. The storms had passed to the north, flooding Kansas City and St. Louis, but offering the southern counties no respite from the month-long drought. Soon the sun would rise above the tree line, and the hot towel Missouri heat would wrap everyone in its sticky embrace. That was 14 hours earlier. I don't know if I said that at the beginning.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that where it starts that way, where you're kind of getting the scene and then everything leading up to it. And I think it's helpful to have that knowledge as the reader before, because you're anticipating what's going to happen, and it just, I don't know, it
that's really interesting because I mean, I had tried different approaches, and until almost the end of it, I had just no announcement that there was a tornado coming. It just had a chapter all of a sudden in the middle of the book that, had like a tornado warning, or a chapter without any of the characters, like just saying, well, the tornado's about to hit. And I get comments as you get test readers and stuff, and said, well, we weren't really surprised that there was a tornado coming. And it's like, I didn't want people to be surprised. I wanted, I'd given all these hints that there was a storm and it wasn't meant to be a surprise. So I thought maybe it's better to just tell them up front, there's a tornado and a lot of bad stuff has happened. And, I was really pleased because it changes everything in a way as to how you view the chapters and think about the chapters, because something's happened, so it gives it a different perspective.
How certain characters are ignoramuses, I guess, in a way. How certain things are something's going to happen, like it's almost like how Pulp Fiction started.
Yeah, right. It's a circular kind of a timeline.
Yeah, and that's one of the greatest movies of all time.
Yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah, I would think you do, based on how you wrote this. It's excellent. I really, I think that everyone should go out there and get this book. One of the ways I also sometimes like enjoying books is through audiobooks. Are you going to be doing an audio version of this?
Yes. In fact, I just saw the announcement today. I mean, I used there was the narrator that I used for American Pastime, who is from Missouri and is not young. I mean, which was probably the right age, a middle-aged guy voice, cover the characters that were in there. He is going to do Everyone Dies Famous. He made the arrangement with the publisher, and that should be available. And everything is a little slower now, it seems like, but in a couple months it should be out. So I'll make sure to keep flogging that along with the ebook and the paperback.
That's great. Yeah, I think, if everyone wants to buy this, again, it's Everyone Dies Famous with Len Joy. It's available everywhere. But again, please find it on Bookends and Beginnings. They are, by the way, open now, but you could always get it from their website, so you don't have to go inside. But we want to support the local businesses, right, especially here in Skokie and Evanston. Len, what do you want to leave us with as a final thought?
I just appreciate the opportunity to get this kind of exposure, and anyone that would be interested, like in a book club locally, even if it's a Zoom book club, but eventually we'll all be able to get out again. I would really love to do that with any of the books. I find it, I would be happy to, make available books at a discount or something, just to encourage that, because it's to me it's a great experience, and I think it would be fun for any book club to do. I think it's a good book for discussion. Absolutely.
Well, please reach out to Len. Len, and by the way, where can people find you online? So if they wanted to reach out to you and contact you, what's the best place?
My website is lenjoybooks.com, www, and that will take you to any of the books and the other stores. I'm on Facebook. I think you just search for Len Joy. You can find me pretty easily, and Twitter as well. And my email address is lenjoy7, the number 7, @gmail.com. So happy to hear from anybody. Of course, that might mean you put on a newsletter list and get more offers. But I'm available.
No, I think that's part of the deal. Also, if you listen to this show. So, well, Len, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for writing this book.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.